The Brothers Karamazov, Book 9, Chapter 2. We saw at the end of Book 8 the circumstantial evidence beginning to pile up on Dmitri. He had the motive for murder, he had the murder weapon, he had the money, he had the blood. And then we saw, as Book 9 opened in Chapter 1, that not only the first category, the circumstantial evidence, is piling up on Dmitri, the second category begins, and that is there's unreliable witnesses. Grushenka's maid makes it more bloody than it actually was. Madame Holikov makes herself a almost victim, and only by a miracle of God did she avoid murder by Dmitri. So he's got those two things going against him: the circumstantial evidence of Book 8 and the unreliable witnesses in Chapter 1 of Book 9. Well, now Chapter 2 of Book 9 gives a third category. So it's not only the circumstantial evidence, and it's not only unreliable witnesses. Now we see what is going to be standing against Dmitri as far as the prosecuting team and the investigators and the police chief. And so Percotin, when he could take his eyes off the lovely Madame Holikov in the end of the last chapter, he comes up with a good plan. It's amazing that he didn't think of this sometime earlier. A crime has been committed, and only after he's gone to Grushenka's house first, considered going to Fyodor's house second, and instead of that goes to Madame Holikov's house, only then does he think that maybe this is a matter for the police, someone with a pestle and blood all over his hands. Only then does it occur to Percotin to go to the police, and so finally he does. And here he arrives at the police chief's house at the beginning of the chapter. And so we get a little bit of backstory about him, and then the narrator quickly fills us in on the fact that he's at the police chief's house, but the police chief is not alone. He's got his daughter and granddaughters there, but he also has other people. And so we go around and we meet two gentlemen quickly, and we see the nature of their character. The first one always wants to be referred to with a rank above his actual rank. So he's a little bit of a pompous person, a little bit of a self-important person, a little bit of a poser. And the second is super into almost a proto-psychological approach, where he's really into getting into people's motives and behaviors and their dark secrets. And so as these two are described, we see that they are great candidates, along with the police chief, the three together, to jump to conclusion, to give a superficial interpretation of Dmitri's actions. So when we meet these three people at the beginning of the second chapter, and really I think that the point of the whole chapter is that these are three people we can almost count on going into it to not do a good job, to only skim along the surface of reality and only continue with their initial impressions, their initial interpretation of Dmitri's actions. So if you put that together with the circumstantial evidence Dmitri shot himself in the foot with, no pun intended, Book 8, the unreliable witnesses in Chapter 1 of Book 9, and now the not very good at their job police chiefs in Chapter 2 of Book 9. So when you put all those things together, it really all amounts to 3 strikes for Dmitri. Then it only gets worse, because Percotin realizes that not only does he see these 3 incompetent boobs at the party, he realizes that they're not sitting like it's a party. They're not relaxed at a table playing cards. They're up talking. There's obviously something in the air, and only then does he find out that Grigory's wife has already reported the murder of Fyodor 5 minutes before, and then the chapter switches to her account of the murder, her interpretation of events, which are she woke up, her husband wasn't sleeping next to her, Smerdyakov was shrieking, and she remembers that she's only heard a shriek like this before. It's when stinking Lizaveta had Smerdyakov, and so that brings to the reader's mind again, yes, it's sad that Fyodor has been murdered, but it brings to the reader's mind, well, why was stinking Lizaveta shrieking at the birth of Smerdyakov? We can pretty much safely assume that Fyodor had raped her. And so we remember, even on the night of his murder, we remember that Fyodor is a despicable character, an evil character, a sensualist, the OG Karamazov sensualist, the bug, the insect. And so Grigory's wife wakes up with that double panic. Number one, hearing the shriek of Smerdyakov, and number two, rolling over and seeing her husband not there. So she gets up and she runs out, and Grigory, moaning and groaning and bloodied and battered, will immediately say, patricide, that Dmitri has struck him and has killed his father. Then she goes and checks out through the window and sees Fyodor is dead and not responding to her shouts or beating on the window. So all she knows is this. She woke up, Smerdyakov was in the midst of a terrible epileptic seizure. Her faithful husband isn't there, but reports what has happened. And not only that, but when you compare the wounds to Grigory and the wounds to Fyodor, it looks like both were struck by the same object. It just happened not to kill Grigory, but it did happen to kill Fyodor. So all of the superficial evidence really seems to point to Grigory is right. There's no reason to doubt his story. And we can just assume that before or after Dmitri struck Grigory, that he murdered Fyodor, and that poor Smerdyakov was shrieking with an epileptic seizure. There's only one problem that for the astute reader. There's only one thing creeping in, and it's this. Smerdyakov is doing a little bit too good of a job with his shrieks. In fact, he is shrieking and shrieking and shrieking so that one medical professional, one person who's familiar with science, basically says, wow, someone with this many seizures in a 24-hour period isn't going to make it another 24-hour period. So Smerdyakov is doing such a good job foaming at the mouth, flipping around, screaming, that it almost seems like he's doing too good of a job. It almost seems scripted. It almost seems like he's lying, that he's performing for some purpose.